This is Dominique Beaumonte, and you are listening to Season with Salt, episode 49. You know, there is a real life danger in having too many people around you. Sometimes we have people around us, we give them names like, oh, this is my village, this is my crew, and we forget the dangers associated with having a bunch of folks surrounding us. One of the things that we have to always consider is when we have people around us, they really influence the way that we think, the way that we act, the way that we respond to things. And sometimes you can be encircled by too many people. Before I really get too deep into this, I want to make sure to note that this is not a call to align oneself with cancel culture. I think that sometimes we get so into canceling people that we forget the consequences of burning bridges. And there are some people in your life that you don't need to cancel, but you need to reevaluate your relationship. There's a difference between canceling somebody and reevaluating your relationship. Canceling somebody is saying, I'm making essentially a decision to disconnect myself from this person on all fronts. They bring no value to my life. Their behavior has pushed me to take action. Disconnecting is different. And I think it's important for us to have this conversation because it's easy to cancel Ice Cube for meeting with the administration, the Trump administration, to talk about his platinum plan. It's easy to cancel people for actions that you don't agree with. But the reality is some of the people that we have considered canceling are family members, people that God put in our lives for us to love and to honor and respect. So what do you do when the person or the people that you have to disconnect from are people that are not just folks that are going to go away easy? What if you have to cancel the influence of a roommate, or you're trying to build a marriage and you have to cancel or disconnect yourself from the influence of an in-law, or you're just got a management job and you have to align yourself with the management and disconnect yourself from folks that were on a level that you used to be on. And so you still have to be in the same space with these individuals, but cancellation is not the same thing. So how do we disconnect from people in our lives that we can't cancel, or canceling them is not necessary? So I want to talk about when things become too crowded for God. I know this podcast episode is called Too Crowded for God, and I just want to make sure that we're on the same page, that there is nothing that God cannot do. There's nothing that God cannot do. He can do anything. The objective today is to really talk about how God sets the stage in our life for us to walk in our purpose. And what that means is that some things and some people are not necessary to his plan, right? And so there are some people that I thought was necessary to my purpose, but they actually were not necessary to the purpose that God had for me. I think we have to check that, because sometimes it's impossible for us to see life without certain friendships, without certain relationships, without certain jobs, without certain family members. And we become so locked into like this really egregious and like poignant connection with them that we cannot let go. And God wants us to let go of the people that get in the way of his plan. And we can be guilty of holding on to people that God does not intend for us to hold on. So, of course, what I like to talk about is these natural principles that I think God wants us to know, but also to use individuals in the Bible to kind of tell the story. In the Bible, you can read this in Judges 7. Gideon is called to defeat the Midianites. And the first thing that God says to Gideon is, "You got too many people. It's too crowded." God tells Gideon, "If you're going to accomplish what I have planned for you to accomplish, I've got to make sure that you don't have an infrastructure in place where the infrastructure and the people get the credit for what I'm going to do in your life." Hear me very closely, friends. I'm going to say this again in a different way. God tells Gideon, "I can't have a lot of people around you because I have to make sure that when you get the victory, when you get the job, when you get the promotion, when you buy the house, when you experience the success, the wife, the husband, the kids, the things of the natural, the things of the spiritual, I got to make sure that nobody else gets the credit but me." And so, in the process of ensuring that nobody else gets the credit but me, I have to eliminate things that are unnecessary to your purpose, but necessary in order for me to be glorified in your life and through your situation. So he says to Gideon, "You got too many people around you, and I've got to rid you of some of these people." I am sure that Gideon was alarmed by this idea. Are you saying that I'm supposed to defeat the Midianites with less people than I already have? Like, how on earth will I defeat a whole army with less people than I currently have? I'm sure he was confused about what God had in mind in order to get him to the place of victory over the Midianites. So God tells him, the first thing that I need you to do is I need you to go to your folks and say, "Hey, if you are too scared to defeat the Midianites, if you are too afraid to go into the camp of the Midianites, I'm going to give you the license to just go back to your tent." So he gets rid of the scared folks. 22,000 of those soldiers said, "You know what? I don't want to deal with the Midianites. It's okay. Y'all go ahead and go without me." And I love this because I think this is particularly important, because one of the things that we have to do if we're going to walk in purpose is we've got to make sure that the people around us are scary people. You know, scary people where, like, when you present an idea, they're too concerned about what other people might think. They start worrying about the money. You know, they start having sleepless nights over your idea. Like, God gave you the idea and you're ready to go forth and you're enthusiastic, and they start, "Well, what about this? Or how are you going to deal with this?" There's some people that their fear will get in the way of your victory, right? Have you ever, like, started telling somebody about a dream or an idea that you had? You start telling them about a job that you were thinking about applying for, and the first thing that comes to their mouth is they start living your experience through their fear. Do you hear what I'm saying? They start, and some of us are guilty of that too. Like, we start having second thoughts about some of the things that people. We start thinking, "Well, are they qualified?" Or, what's going to happen if you leave this job? Or how are you going to pay your mortgage if you start your own business? Right? And sometimes they're truthful things, right? Like, they're really things that we need to consider. But we have to remember that when we're dealing with God and when He puts something in our heart, we have to go outside of man's convention, right? We're so used to doing things, and we're looking for all the ducks to be in a row. But when God empowers us, when God inspires us to do something, all the ducks don't need to be in a row. Right? Like, why do all the ducks need to be in a row? If God inspires us, if God gives it to us, if God puts it in our heart. And so the first thing that God tells Gideon to do is get rid of the people who are too scared to go into battle. And that's the first thing that we really have to do. If you have some people around you that are afraid of where God is going to take you, they cannot see beyond their own fear. We need to get rid of those people. God cannot do what He's going to do when you are under the influence of people who are afraid. Can you imagine Can you imagine if he would have took his full army in there and with these 22,000 people that were scared even to go into battle? Have you ever gone somewhere with somebody that's scary? Like, have you ever got on a roller coaster? I mean, you're fearless and you're ready to go, and the person that you go on is like so scary that they have influence over your experience. Well, that's what was going to potentially happen to Gideon. He was going to have all these scared people, and sometimes when you are fearful, like you go into situations without the victory. Like people are already planning to lose, and you don't want people on your team that are already planning to lose. So God says, Gideon, get rid of the scary folks. That leaves Gideon with 10,000. So he started with 32,000. He got rid of the scary people. That was 22,000, leaves him with 10,000. And he's like, yeah, okay, this is not the number that I planned. This is less than half of the people that I got, but I think I might be. I'm sure he started to think of a game plan that he could come up with. I'm sure he started to try to figure out as a leader, well, what might I do to get this situation taken care of? And then God drops it on him. He's like, Gideon, unfortunately, you still have too many people. It's still too crowded for me to do what I'm planning to do for you. I'm sure Gideon was confused. I'm sure he was like, you know what? It's still too many people. Come on, God. It's still too many people. And so God says, here's what I want you to do, Gideon. I want you to take all 10,000 and I want you to take them down to the brook, and the ones that lap for water with their hands, put them on one side. The ones that do it in another way, put them on another side. So I'm sure Gideon was down there and he got to kind of seeing who was doing it. Maybe he was taking a tally. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, 61, 62, 63, 64, 106, 157, 158, 159, 201, 202, 259, 260. He started counting and he realizes that, okay, of all these 10,000, now all I have is 300. How am I going to beat the Midianites with this 300 people? There is something that God wants us to get out of this as well. Look at the trivial way that God chooses to separate Gideon from the people that he does not need. Friends, we have to be careful not to underestimate when relationships are severed. There are going to be times when relationships that are not important to your purpose are severed for very trivial reasons. Sometimes relationships are not going to make sense. Sometimes people that are not called to your purpose are just going to disappear. Sometimes there's going to be fake news and fake drama and fake stuff that doesn't make sense that is going to separate you from people that you thought would be in your life forever. Don't be alarmed. Gideon, it was no coincidence. It was just whoever drinks the water like this and whoever drinks the water like this. Maybe it didn't make any sense to Gideon, but God knew what he was doing. And so there's some things that are not going to make sense. We have to be careful not to labor over friendships that we have lost, not to labor over employees that we have lost, not to labor over business partners that we have lost, not to labor over ministry partners that we have lost. Some people are just not called to purpose. They might be talented, but not called to purpose. They might be cute, but not called to purpose. They might be very, very, very timely and efficient and administratively savvy and not called to purpose. Just because they are everything that you think you need does not mean that they are called to your purpose. And so God says, you don't need all of these people. And so he leaves Gideon with just 300 people. And he wants us to know. And Gideon, this is such a beautiful story that you can read in Judges 7, but God uses those 300 people, not even necessarily because in the way that you would think traditionally. He uses those 300 people to defeat the Midianites because that's how God works. And so he wants us to know that even though regular human convention says that in order for us to be successful, we need a crew. We need a certain amount of people. We need an accountant, and we need a business partner, and we need this person, and we need a best friend, and we need to be like, Molly, and we need to be a Molly, or we need to be, we have all these constructions in our mind about what we need in order for God to do what he's going to do. But God told Gideon, the problem is if you have this crew, if you have this structure in your life with all these people, what's going to happen is when you get the victory, they're going to take the credit. And so God is like, if I eliminate the things that you think that you need, then what'll happen is you will begin to depend on me the more, because you will realize that what you thought you needed, you don't necessarily need. And so the question I think we have to ask ourselves is, how many people around us are in our purpose? We have to actually pray to God to remove people that don't feed into our purpose, remove people that don't help us get to where God intends for us to go. We have to ask God to help us to not get so caught up in having a crew or looking a certain way or doing things a certain way that we don't acknowledge that we are doing what we are doing in order to bring God glory. God set Gideon up for victory, even though it didn't seem like he was on a route to victory. It seemed like he was on a route to defeat. How is it that I'm going to defeat people without all the things that I need? How am I going to start this business without this person and this person? And sometimes people start with a strong listen, when I was telling you about council culture, I just want to let you know that Gideon did not throw out the baby with the bathwater. Gideon did not say, you know what, the 32,000 people that I started with, since only 300 of you are going to go with me, forget the rest of you. No, he just sent them back to their tents. There'll be another battle for them to help us win. There'll be another opportunity. You're still my people. I still love you. I still will be calling on you. We'll bring the victory back to you, but it's not necessary for you in this particular struggle. So he didn't cancel them. He just disconnected him, because God said, you don't need them. You don't need everybody that you think you need. You do not need everybody that you think you need when you have God. Now listen, don't make the mistake of being like, oh, I'm getting rid of her, I'm getting rid of her, I'm getting rid of her. It takes godly wisdom. The thing that Gideon had to do is he had to trust God to do the separating. He had to trust God to do the weeding out. He had to trust God to eliminate the people in his life that didn't make sense. Some of the people left because they didn't have what it took. They decided in their own heart, this is not for me. This is not my battle. This is not my venture. This is not my church. This is not my idea. This is not my podcast. This is not my job. This is not. Some of the people just weeded themselves out, like, I ain't built for this. This ain't my thing. But the other folks that hung around, it wasn't necessarily for them to be there, and God had to help remove those people. So we also have to be careful not to be out like moving people along and like trying to make people feel uncomfortable so that they go. Guess what? If they are not a part of God's plan for your victory, for your success, God will take care of it. That's what he proves here with Gideon. And so I pose these very important questions to you. I pose these questions to you. Ask yourself, who have I been holding on to that isn't necessary to victory? Who have I been holding on to that isn't necessary to victory? The second question we should ask ourselves is, who have I enlisted to take God's glory? Who have I enlisted to take God's glory? Who have I put my trust in? Who have I believed that they are these are a part of the 10,000? Like, who am I holding on to that's a part of the 22,000 that said that they weren't strong enough to deal with it? And then we need to pray this prayer: Lord, help me to understand that what I have is enough and it's all I need. And guess what? I might not even need what I think I need. I might have more than I need to do what you have called me to do. And help me to realize that when it comes to me walking in purpose, I don't need everything I think I need. I don't need every person. I don't need every idea. I don't need every professional. I just need who you need me to have in order to walk in my way. And so help me not to be participating in cancel culture, but help me to trust you to weed out the people that don't play into my promise, that don't don't play into my future, that are not good for my success. Help me to realize, Father, who's not important for my ministry. Help me to realize if there are people around me that are haters. Help me to realize that there are people around me that are stealing my ideas and giving them to other people. Help me to realize that, Father, and then remove them. You do the work. And I thank you for the people that you allowed them to know that they were not called to my purpose, and so they removed themselves. But help me, Father, to not get caught up in wanting to have the system or the structure or the people that everybody else has. Help me to realize that me and you together is enough. Greater is he that is in me than he is in the world. And help me to remember that your plan for me is so big and so great and so powerful that when it's your plan, when you decide to execute it, when you decide to make it come to fruition in my life, everything that you will need to do that is already in place. I don't have to add people. I don't have to work. I don't have to do no extra work other than have faith and believing that if it's your plan, it will come to fruition. Friends, I want to encourage you. Don't encircle yourself with so many people that God can't get the glory and that your purpose cannot be manifested. I love you and I thank you for participating. If you enjoyed this podcast, let me know. Slip me a text, slip me a Facebook message, follow my podcast. I'm on all the platforms. I'm on 11 different platforms. And also you can hang out with me on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, SWS Podcast or SWS The Podcast. At Gmail. I'm also trying to get my YouTube off the ground. So I appreciate your support. And if you've heard something that you enjoy, please, please, please share. God bless you and have a beautiful day.